IHMS.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. تودتكم مزيد الخوالم كفر الشعتي بارو تيجات واتتنا بايسنا اور سلام السنة مشا وزارك بتابع برد كلاقو تاريخ مداي برنامج أسرة وزاق أنا بجواس أحمد ترنتو منتا هوي تاريخ مداي برنامج ملهنيو بايسنا ونفزا بطلها ومتبكت شلنكو شهيدات أيام وأساس مشابهة نور يزلم بيو جنة من الله وزلو شيو كلانا كده دوابه عن رسايو زودا كله حاجة وقت بكتب موشا زيادة دواوا تفرق جراس سريوا بومبيم كتب كلاشني وكده مشاو غارزنا بي ولدايسنا يشيو كوكتا تاريخو خلف موشا دركي نبرو نحل بازيو لي ومسيو لي ولدايسيو ليوا دين يو لي زودكو شهيداج أيام كوبا زي كركوتا ولدايسنا لي أيتكسي حلف عايشنا لي أيتكسي تاريخ زناويو كولدالو أساس مشابه تورنتو بي اترقب ذا الجيسي حسن أباس با شهيدات أما روحزو بروحزو تفتف بايتي بي تبزا شي برنامجو الناش با تفتاتلو كتا حسن أبازو أم با سالت خيب بلونا جيسي حسن أباس مفير زناو مديجة متقبل خابي شكرا كلاه لقدا حسن أباس ما ينتاو هاي بعد بيختولدا هاي بيخليكا من كل ملا مهوجي من دلا جلابي هادو باب قصهم ذكر بي سعد جاي سنة كدير سواجين ديما دبل ما كإمنا.
أنا حسن أباس عبد الرحمن أنتن تولد خبو أديس أبابا بنتا لكن وجنة بيتا تورونتو مقالة زديجون ملاك أيام تورونتو بيتا وقت community center بوجه community center programات زالات زال بي وجنة بيتا زي تقلخو سلا هذا community involvement زي قلخو بو سبب نينا دي زي قلخو بو سبب أصلي university زي قلخو بكينتا university زي قلخو سا على عبادتها زي قلخو عاشوا بعد ما بجاك يسوز النار ببعد انتا ما زي قلخو سا تقوشو ما نتمر سامي ديجان أسوبا دي يسوز بزرعه كساكا ما نتمر سامي ديجان سو هذا سبب ليه إسحاب بينات شبخ حرري youth committee ينزل جماعة قلنا تورونتو مقالة ب وتاتشوا درمواهجات يتلاموا دبوزاتوا عادة زيو بسنان زيو دم دبوزات committee تلقنا أزو لاحظ خما سدا عادة تاريخ سنة بمبوع جلخو نيندي مكرا زلقل خوبه أو أواج باخو بجي خاصاني ناكو نيندي أو بنارة الله يترحمنا وا سدا عادة زاد بجي خيتين نزنارة جيسنا ملمدوم أزيوبة زلمتخو لكن عادة ذاتهم وتاريخ ذاتهم جيسو تاريخ ذاتهم أزيو نار نيندي أفسد كيفتهم لكن زسنا بدون سا أبصح قرا سنان طرفت يستنارو ما ذكروا كل قرخ قرا لمدينة نارو سو هوجي نستني بازانا إن شاء الله سلا جلانكو حربي زادنتا نينا دي جلانكو حربي باتي زي سما خسا أو بيت نارا لكن سنان ده طرف سجستنارو ملي أسوبا لما مزخشسا جهاد ياشي مروز من مدحربا so أزوك كذا خو كذا إنترنت لابك كفاش خو كذا كتاب كل كره خو كذا جالنكو منتا ينزل سنابه كو presentation تبعش خنارة ما أحد شيء حد دينك إذا شيء حل قرا أنا فيز بزتنا كان شيء أبتحزو سلا منتا جالنكو منتا ليقومه نادي عن كرنا شباب مجال بسنان مجال نقرا جالنكو باخو يقرا منتا لزوخو يقومه ما فيز بكفتيش زالش نارا because ما نتسنا ما نتسنا يترهز عشان تاجا جالوكو بعضنا ذكرتنا بحرب ما أسوسنا بجهز تفاجئ بحرب نارا ما الناتش generations أنا الموقع بفيز كافي عشان عشان نارا ما أظن النار يسنان بيننا لزبوخو شيشتي أمت بكد چلانکو كتابتي باخوما program أشخنا community center بي programs أشخوصا بريناچه بوا كوجم عشنا بزادش دي جمع استماع وسافز بدنا كينارا جيسو حربي يتمهد عن نسخ وكم يخون يزالش دي جمع أحمد نارا كناچه بك سلا جيسو حربي يتمهد نسخ وكم زين نارا وأسعد أواجم دي جمع هوجي أواجنا بزت سمنة تاريخ هوجي أخاف بسمنة بايم فيز به قلبي زيتنا كان نار سلا چلانکو حربي زات زلمة دسا ما حسن ما ننتوا كمين سبخ مكبت دولة باخو ما تبرخو برا يتهلين يوم دزخ
ما شاء الله الله يبارك أو خالم الله سوج النسو يستيو بجي نلمدي بوز نلمدي لجز مزانا كده زمانتنا باب انتيو ما بجيش ناري وكوز نارا ذكري بهم دين بهم كمين نعم الله ذكر زاشي وسينارو الله سوج النسو يستيو أخاف هذا يقولنا ما شاء الله واتي أخا تايزو الله وأجر أتمنى ما ذكر بهم كأنا مولوداش بهم تايزنا تلحدزاخ تايزو تلحدزاخ نسكيم البيت هي خزا خشي ومن المدمى التايم بورد أي تكس وقت فجبه
بجه وقت تازف جبن because الناج بجه كتب زالناش متنا بجه كتاب سنم زنارة زتفاجن تاما زتفاجتا so أبزه زالنا oral history تا يدوزان أف يتقبل زال سنان so نينا دي زقل خوصا أواش متبر منارا أظن بجه وقت زتفاجبن انتا نينا دي بآوة قل خوما كل زيناكي فوينهم حرفو وترانت بتعرف يزالشون كالفاش خو كده كده تبرخو كده زسامة توشي عشان أرى لكن أزو كل زسامة توسام بجه يقدر يزالشين أرى تاريخ ممللكة بجه يقدر يزالشين أرى من أزو زرخ خوصا كن إنترنت فوين حرفما زد كتبوا كتابات فارس أخكرا الله زستم فراكوت به ممللكة بتخو زكبت وتهاجو ما مكاسي وقتي فاجئ بأخبارهم قرا at least وحريوان السين information ما سامت له كو أنا ناف research أشي زاخ كذا ما بجي أخذ التاوغ الخبوتها لكن الحمد لله إذا تشندم الحمد لله باتتا
أو قابكاتي يشيو بجي توكا كتا غرغار زا شيخ ما ميبي هلو جرام هلو إيرو جرام الله مليم تلي زاخ ساتشالو
كوت سوحل إيه لكن قدر رسم التيو تقولش عن بيقدر على أبا كتبي هجيه أحد زو عبد الله الشريف أنت ترانت بحل وكتاين محمد عبد الغفور أنت عن أبا يكون عند درجة بي أظن في سبق على زاش أنت
إن شاء الله هي أخا Chelanqo حاجة دفتف آخر ما زجين خابي بس سبرايز ذا شيخ ما بس دنك أخشي من ده أخا أمرين أشتغل بعدين
فيزبل سبرايز زاشن شيء نينا دي شيء سبرايز زاشن الناج عن موقع زنانتا من لبايتي Chelanqo زانس قدر شيء جيسو دبكا فيزبل قدرين شيء سنتاما الناج كنرسنا من تاله زخ عن موقع زنا فيزبل سبرايز زاشن شيء وكفت تلشن شيء انتا أظن تا أحد الأزاخ إيه
ما أخا عمري بيزال ولداج ما جيشي وها دفتف باخي ما زغين خاو زياجو مغنيو كتا ناج بازينا بيم خانا جرا ولداج خلو فلوزار هيرو زالوا يسمو زال بنتا زو نسيب البابا كي هم مسمايت نارا زو بزو دفتف باخي لكن نتليم ديو لأن جبت هذا أنا ولداج مع خلوف ناشلي وزان ولداج لي يروح زي بفاجئ مع بازي تاريخ وإزي مع نسي كوكتا من أين هذا
The other advice im de uzach gidiru sumat habranta warsana beka warsana bakhmed gebenma zala yu tarikh mansa because ingilisinam be yirozal حربي زماجة توي كتابي كتبي زالي لالو حربي زماجة كتابي كتبي زال زماجة أبزح قرا تعرف سو متقبل يتفركم so سويت حربي زال أنا فبجه كتب زاد جيسو كتبه منتا ما بجه يقبل بازال تاي حال وبجه زالت أين شيء زاد كتبه بهم حتى لا جالو حربي زاد زسانة نقرا لكن أصول بحربي بزخانة شيء موقع خشو قرا أو عايشنا بخمت قبل ما تاريخه زاش بمسادة هيدفان استيو.
حلو زاش اشتمت بك أشلنكو كتبتيه وزقدر خوصة نسيب وافق أي مديش فوت نرى الزوبي ها بحميتا خابز كان إنه زي باج حلمو على قدر سواش بين نار دشوا.
نارو so نينا دي أزو كتبتي زاش بسا أبزه قرقار زاشنا في درما وحاشاشتي برينا جدي زاخ هادو أمير هارون سارة علي هنان دوري إيمان أحمد واداج بجه ناروكو أسر نخونانا قرقار زاشون لكن آياتش بقرقار زاشون قدرس بقرقار زاشناش فز بشكرا ليوزاخ زير يوسف مليا أو بحر زير عبد الغفور نجيب سفيان فز بقرقار عشان رو دكتور قرار الله خير جزاء يستيوه تترخو بزعم زوايام دود فز بدواء شما كلا قلم مرة لخش زانشين تبعي ما فز بقرقار عشان نارا
لا يها سواش نجرا كيواتي أخا وصواي سنايك وزالو من تتبزاش كلنا ونهيجانوها سكرين زو نستقبل
شكرا
سؤال تشالنجر شو كيما تبرا فزبورت إن شاء الله
أهلا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد السلام عليكم. My presentation today is going to be about the Chelanqo War. The Jalanko War is a defining moment towards the Harari people, as it is when we lost our independence to the Abyssinian government. But before we continue with the presentation, one thing I want you guys to be aware about is the theme of lose the war, but win the battle. It's a recurring theme throughout the presentation, and it speaks true to what the Harari people have been through in the aftermath of the war. So just please keep that in mind. But before we continue, I want to talk about what was Harar before the war. So let's take it back to what the origin of the Gesu people were. Although there are many theories as to what our origins are, only a few of them are substantiated. The most common one that I've heard from our elders and from writing is that the Harari people come from 7 tribes that inhabited the eastern region of Ethiopia, and they were later brought together to make Harar and the Harari people. As you can see on the left screen over here, it shows you an ancient map of what the region looked like before these tribes were brought together. And on the right, you see an old picture of what Harar looked like before modern day. You can note there's a few differences, such as the river that used to flow by that no longer exists, and stuff of that sort. So what evidence do we have of our existence before the rulership? Well, the first is ruins. So throughout the eastern horn of Africa, we have ruins that exist of ancient Harari people, also known as the Harla people. And you can find these ruins throughout East Africa. Other things are archaeological findings, such as currency. So we find currencies among other things that are buried throughout East Africa that show our existence and our presence in the region. The third thing that we have is oral history. So oral history passed on from one generation to another until it reached us of our existence in the region And the fourth thing is text. So we have ancient texts that show our presence. And one thing interesting about this picture over here, it's old Sabai writing. So right now, the Harari people use the Giz to dictate their writing. But before we use Giz, we used to actually use Arabic letters. And before we used Arabic letters, we actually used these letters over here that show under text. So this is old Harari writing. And after Islam was prominent and it was established in our region, we switched over to the Arabic script. But this script was used in the past. So when did Hadar become Hadar? The story starts with Amir Habuba and Abu Badr. One of the first documented kings of Hadar was Amir Habuba, may Allah have mercy on him. He's believed to be one of the first kings of Hadar. Although there is a few things that allude to there being kings before Amir Habuba, but Amir Habuba was the first documented king. His reign was troubled by a tribal war and enemy attacks. So what Amir Habuba did was he sent dignitaries and delegates to the Hijaz region, which is modern-day Saudi Arabia, to find someone who's suitable to bring peace to the region. So when Amir Habuba's men went to the Hijaz region, they found a man by the name of Umar al-Rida. Okay, and when they met Umar al-Rida, they extended Amir Habuba's invitation towards Hadar. And when he came to Hadar, Umar al-Rida took many initiatives to bring peace to the region and bring the clans together. And upon his success, in the year 405, Umar al-Rida, who was a scholar, a warrior, a dignitary, he came to Hadar with his tribesmen and family members from the Hijaz region. And he brought peace to the area. And upon his success, Amir Habuba offered Umar al-Rida the throne to Hadar. So Umar al-Rida became the second documented king of Hadar. But he had to fulfill three criteria that were set upon him. The first of which was to change his name to a Hadari name. So Umar al-Rida then has changed his name to Abu Badr, which he is most commonly known by today by the Hadari people. Abu Badr was then asked to marry a Hadari woman, to which he married Ayabida, who became his wife. And third, he was asked to learn the Hadari language, which he also did as well. One thing Abu Badr was known for is naming the city of Hadar. So when Abu Badr came to Hadar and he brought the 7 tribes together, he saw it fit to give them a new name. So he used something called al-Abjadiyya. Al-Abjadiyya is an Arabic science where every letter in the Arabic language has a numerical component to it, a numerical value to it, right? So the Arabs used to use this science to name certain years or to name significant events. So what Abu Badr did is that he took the year he came to Hadar in, which was 405, and he took the numerical value equivalent to that letter, which is a ha, which equals 5, and 2 ras, which equals 200. So when you have a ha, ra, that's 5 plus 200 equals 405. So that's how Hadar received this name. And the people who inhabited the area were later known as Hadaris. So Abu Badr united the clans under one state. He spread their religion to neighboring lands, and he helped his Awaj elders, and he established the city of Hadar. So eventually, Hadar became part of the Adal Empire, and we were a major part of the empire. But what was the Adal Empire? Well, it was an Islamic medieval sultanate that ruled the Eastern Horn and Africa. The empire consisted of many different ethnicities. Among them were Afars, Hararis, Somalis, and a few others. Its capital was originally the port of Zayla, and if you can see on the map, it's closer to where it says the Horn of Africa. So that was one of the original capitals for the sultanate, but it was later brought to Hadar by Imam Ahmed al-Garain. And that was a huge economic strong point for the Hadar when the capital was brought to the city. The empire was widely expanded by 3 names mostly. The first of which was Amir Mahfuz. The third was Imam Ahmed. and the third was Amir Nur. These were all kings of Hadar, and surprisingly enough, they were all related in one way or another. Amir Mahfud was the adoptive father and the father-in-law of Imam Ahmed, and Imam Ahmed was the maternal uncle of Amir Nur. Their names are mentioned throughout Abyssinian Portuguese texts documenting their conquest and their wars. So these pictures over here kind of give us an idea of what the Adal Empire looked like. The first picture you see on the top left corner is a depiction of Imam Ahmed himself scouting an area before he engaged in war. The picture beside it, the two swords, it's what a common Adali sword used to look like. So these are the type of swords they used to fight with. And you'll find a few examples of these in the Hadar Museum. On the top right side, that's not a picture of Adal empires, but it's very similar to what they would have looked like. On the bottom middle, the painting that you see, that's actually a depiction of what the port of Zayla used to look like. So the capital of the Adal Empire before it was brought to Hadar was the city of Zayla, and that's what it used to look like. And on either side of the painting, you can see old Adali ruins. So the bottom left side is what the port of Zayla looks like now, and on the right side, it's old ruins of the Adal Empire found in different parts of East Africa. So I mentioned their names before, but who are Imam Ahmed and Amir Nur? They're very important figures within the Adal Empire and towards the Hadari people. Imam Ahmed ibn Ibrahim, he was the Imam that expanded the Adal Empire further into the west. He did so by running raids into the Abyssinian Empire and to ensure the security of the Hadari people. He started off as a general in Amir Mahfuz's army, and he later became the head of the Sultanate, leading to what was referred as the conquest of Abyssinia. And for those who want to read more about this subject, they can read a book called Futuh al-Habasha, which in a very detailed manner explains his life and the wars he fought in the Eastern Horn of Africa. Among the nicknames he was given is Al-Ghazi, which in Arabic it translates to the conqueror. And also he was also called Al-Garain, which in Somali translates to the left-handed because he was left-handed. But one thing which is very interesting is he was never referred to as a sultan, and that was for a number of reasons, but he was the leader of the empire. He died at war, and he was succeeded by his wife, Dilwambara bint Mahfuz. And when he died, his wife took over the empire, and she was the leader, and she actually led campaigns and fought wars as well. She did so until her nephew Amir Nur ibn al-Wazir al-Mujahid was of age to take over the empire. So she took care of the empire until Amir Nur was of age. And when he was, he led the empire into what was known as the master of this, what was known as the master of the second conquest. So due to his success into running raids into the western part of the empire and further expanding it, he was given the title Sahib al-Fath al-Thani, which in Arabic means the master of the second conquest. The Amir fought many wars and later died of a natural cause. Today his tomb can be found behind Hadar's Grand Mosque, and that is actually a picture of his tomb that you can see on the bottom. And on top, it's a depiction of what Imam Ahmed al-Garain looks like. So one thing Amir Nur is very well known for is establishing the city of Hadar. When he became king, when he became the Amir, it was at a very fragile time where the longevity and the security of Hadar was at risk. So we were at a point where we almost lost the city, but due to Amir Nur's cunning wit and his strategic planning, he was able to save the city. One of the first things he did was defeating the emperor of the Abyssinian Empire, who was known as Golubi. So in the year 1559, the Emperor Golubi marched towards Hadar to eradicate it. But he was killed by Amir Nur, and his head was later brought to the city. The second initiative that Amir took was fighting the Battle of Kaffa. Noor continued fighting for 12 years until, according to legend, one of the battles he fought in, he screamed out to his people, Kaffa, which means enough, meaning we had enough fighting, and he returned back to Hadar. It is believed that the province is named Kaffa for this reason. The third initiative that the Amir took was building the wall of Hadar. So the Amir noticed that neighboring tribes were entering the city and raiding it and harming the people. So he consulted the city elders, and they suggested building a wall. So he appointed someone by the name of Al-Warika. So if you can see the picture on the top of the slide, where you see a maqam in a tree, that's his maqam. So he appointed Al-Warika to design the blueprint of what the wall would look like, and then he later executed the building of the wall. The fourth thing that the Amir is known for is domesticating the hyenas of the city. So following the establishment of the wall, hyenas began to attack the people of the city. After investigating the issue, Amir Noor realized that the wall prevented the hyenas from coming into the city to feed off the scraps. So he built a small hole for them to enter in, which are known as Warab al-Nudud. And the last thing that the fifth initiative that the Amir took in establishing the city was bringing Sharifs, who were descendants of the prophets, to the city. So during the end of his reign, he began to worry about the sustainability of Hadar. So Amir Noor consulted the Muslim leaders, and he asked that some of the Sharifs, meaning descendant of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the Hijaz region to be brought to Hadar, so that the blessings of the Prophet's bloodline would save the city. So from the death of Amir Noor up to the Battle of Chelanqo, there is a lot that happened which we really can't cover in the amount of time that we have. But many wars were fought, many kings have passed, and at this point, we're going to talk about the Jalanko War. So what happened in the Jalanko War? There were two sides to the war. One side was the Abyssinian Empire, and the leader of the Abyssinian Empire was Menelik II. His reign lasted for about 14 years, so from 1889 to 1913 was his reign over the Abyssinian Empire. He was described as a stern man, praised by Ethiopian historians for his conquests. He was attributed for colonizing the sought-after city of Hadar and defeating the Italians. After the war, he was promoted from his title of general, in Amharic Nugus, to emperor, in Amharic called Nugus Nagist. On the other side, so the Hadari side, we had Amir Abdullahi II. Amir Abdullahi's reign only lasted for 2 years. He was described as a stern man. He laughed very little and was a devout Muslim. So this is what the text we have now describe him as. He was attributed for ending the colonization of the Egyptians over the city. When Amir Abdullahi was a young man, the Egyptians colonized the city of Hadar, and he had to leave. But when he returned, he overthrew the Egyptians and took back the rulership. After the war, after losing the Battle of Jalanko, Amir Abdullahi sent his family to Jigjiga, and he lived a secluded life until his death. So what started the war? A lot of people kind of dig into this, and they want to know what started the Battle of Jalanko. Well, what started the Battle of Jalanko was letters of provocation sent by the Emperor Menelik. So before we get into these letters, one thing that I want to bring to light is why was this an opportune time for the Abyssinian Empire to fight the Battle of Jalanko? Well, the main reason is because Hadar was slightly unstable at that time, because in a span of a very short span of time, Hadar had a lot of change in power. So we had the father of Amir Abdullahi was king, who was later removed, and the Egyptians came into Hadar and they took Hadar as a colony, and then Amir Abdullahi came back and overthrew them, and he took the rulership. So this constant change in power created an instability within the city of Hadar. So Menelik, or the Abyssinian Empire, saw this as an opportune moment to make a move to capture the city of Harar because of the instability. And this was something that was a goal since the time of Imam Ahmed, or even before that. So what Menelik did was he sent a letter to Amir Abdullahi. And in that letter, he said Harar has been an Ethiopian province for over 400 years. And that must now be resumed, and an annual tax must be paid in respect of former times. So that was untrue, but these were the starting points of how the war got started. Amir Abdullah replied by saying, "I know no master except the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire." So at that time, in a way, we answered to the Ottoman Empire, which was a Muslim empire. So Amir Abdullah was basically saying to him that he would not surrender the city of Harar to the Abyssinian Empire. Menelik, receiving his letter, responded by a second letter urging the Amir to surrender the city. Amir Abdullah again replied by saying, "When you are a Muslim, then I will consider you my master." And with this letter, Amir Abdullah sent an Islamic gown, a Harari turban, and a prayer mat. So these were invitations of Amir Abdullah for Menelik to enter Islam. But Menelik saw this as an insult and it infuriated him. And he replied, "I will come back to Harar and replace your mosque with churches. Await me." So when Amir Abdullah received this letter, he saw this as a call to war, and he ordered his men to prepare to fight a battle. Amir Abdullah sent his soldiers within the walls of the city to call out to the people to come out to war. And one of the texts they states that one of the cries that Amir Abdullah called out on that day to the Harari people was, "They wish to erase your identity." I'm just going to play the audio at the bottom over here.
كبير بالسرماني نوايا هوايا عقري قاصدا حربي بتولي نوايا هوايا ورم قاصدا حربي بتولي نوايا هوايا الله يا الله الله يا الله يا دائم بملكه شنن زقدل
So the audio we just heard right now was actually a song of war. It's a song that the Harari soldiers used to sing to prepare for war. Among it, you hear lyrics like "Faras Magalebe Sisa Bulbuli," which means in the horse market, the soil is bubbling from how much the horses would prepare for war. So that was just an interesting thing I wanted to add to this presentation, that we also had songs of war that we used to sing in such times. So the men of Harar began to prepare for war, and they set out. What did the war look like? Well, the Harari troops totaled up to about 4,000, and they marched out to the land of Jalanko, which was outside the region, to engage in a battle with a few Turkish cannons, guns, swords, and horses. So one thing important to note over here is that we were not properly equipped for this war, because we were at like a steady decline, and we didn't have the necessary weaponry to fight. Many of the soldiers left the city through the gate of Harar called Badr Bari. Hence why the gate is also nicknamed Mujahideen Bar, also known as the Gate of Warriors. On January 5th, the Abyssinian army arrived on Jalanko grounds and set up camp to celebrate their Ethiopian Christmas. Menelik, expecting the Harari troops to attack, ordered his troops not to celebrate the holiday. So he ordered them not to consume any alcohol or let their guards down to celebrate the holiday. And the night of, the Harari army arrived at the battlefield. the next morning. And they stood by a nearby mountain, gazing down on the Abyssinian army. If you can see on the bottom right corner, it's actually a picture. The source I received it from says it's actually an actual picture of men marching towards the Jalanko grounds. And on the top is Badr, where most of the warriors of Hadar used to camp beside so that they would train. So the Hadar army arrived the next morning, and they stood over the mountain looking down on the Abyssinian army. And again, this gives the Hadar army an advantage of running downhill, which gives them momentum. So the Hadar army attacked the Abyssinians, and the Abyssinian army was about 25,000. That's more than 6 times more than our number. So we were at a great disadvantage. So we were expecting the Ethiopian army to be drunk, but to our surprise, they were ready, and they were fighting. They were shooting cannons and bullets towards the oncoming army. So the Hadar army was greatly outnumbered and retreated behind a mountain. At this point, an allied clan betrayed the Hadar army and exposed the troops' location, to which the Abyssinian army came, and they massacred about 700 newlyweds. And the term 700 newlyweds translates into Gaysanan as Sati Bakla Aruzach, which we will talk about more in regards to the aftermath of the war and how we remember these people. And one thing that I want to bring up over here is that oftentimes when you hear the story from Hadari elders, they tell you Sati Bakla Aruzach, right? So we think that only 700 men died in this war, and that's not true. We lost a lot more people in this war. The 700 that died, they were just newlyweds, but there were more people who died in this battle. So we lost the war, and what had happened after the war is that Menelik and his men came to the city of Hadar, and they forcefully opened all of the gates, and there was a lot of atrocities that occurred at this time. One of the unfortunate things that I realized during my research is that a lot of the texts that we have today do not do justice to what actually happened. So a lot of the texts that we have today telling us about what happened after the war, it's very watered down, and they make it seem almost peaceful, the way the history continued between the Ethiopian government and the Hadar people. But that was not the case. After the Abyssinian army came to Hadar and opened up the gates, there was a treaty made between the elders of Hadar and the Abyssinians, but that treaty wasn't upheld. So it was later betrayed. Also, there was many massacres and many systemic discriminations towards the Hadari people in this time. But what happened after the war? So this is where the theme lose the war and win the battle, and this, in my opinion, is the most important part of this presentation, because when the people have been conquered or colonized, their history and our history was burnt, and our identity was tried to be erased. We technically lost that war, right? But as a people, our people carried out our traditions. They passed it down from one generation to another, and we retaliated and maintained our identity as Muslims and as Hadaris, and that's how we won the war. That's how we won the battle. So we lost the war quite literally by losing the war, but we won the battle by maintaining our identity as Hadaris and Muslims. And that's what I'm going to speak about in this part, the aftermath. So among the things that were done after the army entered Hadar was that people caught teaching the culture and religion were killed and imprisoned. So we weren't allowed to, we didn't have that freedom of speech where we can teach our culture and our religion and our languages from one generation to another. So in this time, we lost a lot of our history. Our books were burnt, and in attempt to protect the books from being burnt, some of our people buried their books. Others were taken to Egypt and some were hidden in libraries. So the books that were burnt by the Abyssinian army, we lost for good. We're not getting that back. And the ones that were burnt the ones that were buried in order to protect them, some of them were recovered and some of them were lost. And the ones taken to Egypt, according to some texts, say that they never came back to Harar. So we lost a lot of history in this time, to say the least. But whatever remains can be found in the Museum of Harar. And after the war, our people did not stay silent and they did not just allow things to happen. There were many revolutions where Hararis tried to retaliate and regain their independence again. And one of those moments was a movement called the Golubi Movement. The Golubi Movement was a movement led by Harari men and women who joined alliance with neighboring Somalis. They fought to regain Harar's independence and against the oppression of the Abyssinian government. Most of the men that were detained, most of the men that took part in this movement were detained and killed. The last few survivors passed away roughly when I made this presentation, it was 2 years ago, but it's almost 5 years ago now. Among them was Colonel Abdul Salam and Haji Yusuf. But before I go to this slide, I want to play an audio for you guys quickly.
أول كتاب كتب واد فكر زليل لأساس ميلان فكر قدير انت يوكا ذا زيت هذا بنتان تربوز بوزا شالوا جالي كفر غارتيستا عبد بلتو جازو كفر غار يتيستا تربوز بوزا شالوا.
So the lyrics we heard now speak about how we preserved our culture in such a trying time. So as I mentioned, most of our history most of our books were burnt and buried, and our people weren't able to teach the culture and religion. But the lyrics you hear now kind of tells us how we protected our identity despite all of that. And in the first part of the song, you hear. You hear right? Which basically means the people of the past used to write their history in books. And they say, which means music, our songs, are lofty, and the ones who know them won't leave them out. So what they're saying over here right now is that in the past, we used to write our history and language in books, but today we sing them in songs. So we pass our history down in songs, and the one who knows us won't leave it alone. And the bottom two slides, and the bottom two pictures you see over here, were the last few survivors of the Golubi movement. The first video I'm going to play is of Colonel Abdul Salam and the advice he had towards Harari youth.
بزناراج بذكراج حلو سبعينات تزيو زو اكتوايا ما بين بموتوا سبعينات حرت انت زالو حي زالو سو كلهم سبو طور ما زالاك حرت ووفدي لزليتا ما زالو أحد حل حرت يسوت السراء حد به حرت ذكراج حزو أستاذ أحمد خليل أستاذ كوتاين يا أمانتي حاجي عبد الله خطيب أمريكا بحلو كحسيدو دي بحلو كحسو دي بحل دي خال شيشتاين حاج عبد يونس دامروز لآوزو حرتان يوسف أحمد إدريس جاي بحل أنا بخو كامي تاريخ أنت زكيبك أنا وزو مو كامل السنان، لكن تاريخ أبا واحد يتولدوا بحروف وتنشئي يكاترال. أبو عمر أحمد وزير أحمد عمر كلف جايبه اسبيتال بزي قدروا وقام الرقم، لكن زاشي وشيوا وسوزل زاشيوا نفسه ستل تو أن يكاترين يعني وسؤال أن الاتحاد غيره أنا بني آدم ملتي. أستاذ محمد يوسف إسماعيل أخا وفد بذكرات دوم التينت بازو بزوقتي نبري ناقر حيل سلاسي وياك اللي زخشوا شيء مساشلو ينبري ما زودي به إذا بحل يزوم يجيب تنارو كاهرة بسال كده ديجو يرقب قوله الآيات وساوشو إنفلونزا أيوش لبايتي تأثير أيوش لي مرقب خشار يي وسوزنا ملة وسوزنا الدينارات ملة لا شلو ملة كيما لا شلو يوم ملتا أخاء زاناج يي وسوزنا لي يا شبابات سينا خانة كدير خانة حد مخنمة قالك قال لي سوزي نتور كلهم ساج Chelanqo be زموته نفس زوج ساج وسو أخب المثل نكي حاج وور توات وين به علامة حليو ريمبرانس داي أحسن حد نوفمبر الدي بيشالو الدي ما وردك إلا تابكارو كتبت له إنجاي من قترينا سوزنا كتبت له حشموشة قدير شيزو أنا خيتي رازا شباباي سينا هوجي فراكوت حليو تعليم به حرب بومني لينا خا حرب نبوم يومت لكن نتواجه نزال تاريخ زناو إزاي من فرق رجال إنياش أو لا يزوبي منسى إزاي بحير دي زالي ولد زيلا يساتي كنت يمتى خشازانا يترخبي وكم زليل وقت ما دايع عنخن تكشف مخنا زين اللي نفرو مينا لكن نفرازانا متليايا زين اللي انت نفرازانا كدير شي خسارة يقول دي بنزال أحد خان نقيرة حسوا بفرق نعمل فراكوت حالنا كيسو الله ستعيو.
So that was the first presentation where Qurra Abdul Salam spoke about his time in the Golubi Movement. But he also mentioned a few important notes about the Jalanko War, which I want to reiterate. He mentions that in Canada over here, on Remembrance Day, on the 11th of November, we put flowers on our shoulder, on our chest, a red flower, in remembrance of those who fought in the World War. And he mentioned that what's holding us as Hararis back from doing the same for those who fought for our identity in the Jalanko War. And a quick story about me. This video actually was the reason why I started this whole presentation. After watching it, I realized that he spoke about something that had a huge impact on us as a people, but no one really knew about it. So in their remembrance, it is what motivated me to make this presentation. The second video we have here is advice from Haj Yusuf Muhammad Idris towards the Harari youth.
من تبع غيره أحدنت متوادد بواحد لكن ملمد تعليم خام بعد بزوطة أبا بعد بزوطة أسا كوتين أنت أو دينة بجي حاجة يرقبي أو تعليم في البينام دماء يرقبك أنت بعضو لكن ما جرّيه بعد خد بيتكم صار كل يوم بوالي خي والو قاري تكبحون يجي بايت خذوا بعد بذاك بذلك الله يبارك أيو الله يرزق أيو الله يبارك أيو الله يرزق أيو ذك بايت حلبيو أحدنا تتلاقي وضود بي أود بذال وتاي متوادد أحلى ذي رحيم ذي رحمة موشى متوادد تبتي متوادد ما ذك بايت ما متلاحد انت يتخيل دان ناج ذاك متخيل دان هوسا كل ثم أول كتا جيسو ينبل البيت انت أنا يسمى أنا معانو معهم متخانو يدعشو يوم متخانا جرا بناش انت أحد نسيو يتلاحدو ما تعليم رمضان تعليم ذو يلم دما قرقارة تبتي يتاشو ما دلاقة زي دلاقة يفاجو ما يسبو ما سؤلهم ما مباخي سلامة بحر قشقر بعض ذو لخدمة عشير قبقال يساقني بحر بعض ذو بقار مجي خلوا انفيس موش على بايتي يديج ما يدلقال يبقى ذك بايتي ما مدلق ما حنت بمبرتين تاني هذا حان دا شوكا الله يباركه الله يرزقهم تيرو ذاق الله يباركه الله يرزقهم تيرو ذاق ملي بعد بعد بس بعد دوتا بعد خاطر دلتان متغير هتخشعل بجي حين بيم هذا بتخشعل باغي الله يرزقان نشاء دان حاجات بداش الله يرزق ايو حدت اللي استيو واددو واتين تلدا.
So if we move forward, how was our culture, identity, and religion passed down to us, even with all the limitations put on by us by the colonizers? Well, the first thing was afochas. So who was left in Harar after the war? When 4,000 of its men left the city and 700 newlyweds were killed, and an X number of people were also killed that were not the 700 newlyweds. Just the mothers, elderly men, and children were left in the city. It was due to their extensive efforts that the Harari name was carried out to the children, to the generations that came. So one of the main reasons we have our culture now and was able to be maintained was because of our mothers. And that's why you can see the first picture on the bottom right corner of a Harari woman with a moat on top of her head. And in that moat, you see the whole city of Harar, signifying that it was our mothers that carried our culture after the war. So previous to the war, the gatherings we now know as afochas never really existed in what we know it to be as now. It was these women that started it. They began to gather in groups every month, helping each other out by getting each other's children married, handling funerals, sharing stories of the past and their culture. They helped each other with their day-to-day struggles. Through the afocha, they built a sense of community, and they would help raise each other's children. And you can see that in the bottom right picture and in the top middle picture. The second way we pass down our culture, which I kind of alluded to in the slide before, is through our songs. Through our songs, we encrypted our history and our identity and passed them down from one generation to another. But before I continue, I just want to play one audio for you guys. So song was used as a tool, not only to pass down our history, but also to build the morale of our people. And the song you hear now is sang by our mothers, and they say Zaman ne tamchachu, which translates to adapt to the times you live in. And they say Fankazoba detu, work by its seasons. And they say Zaman michachu lokota ikhashal, and time requires you to adapt to it. This is exactly how we lost the war but won the battle. We were colonized, but we did not let our identities be erased or diluted. We were resilient and remained Muslim and maintained our Harari identity. Another way that we carried on the culture and to maintain our identity is by having mass weddings. So periodically, the people of the city would have mass weddings where multiple bride and groups would get married on the same day. And this is done in the remembrance of the 700 that were killed on that day. And the video I'm going to show you now is one of these weddings. So in the video, again, we saw a mass wedding where multiple brides and grooms were married together in remembrance of the 700 that were 700 newlyweds that were killed or martyred, to say, on the Battle of Jalanko. And other ways we remember the Battle of Jalanko is through the aforementioned. In Hadar, the Jalanko and the loss of the independence is symbolized by the color red. So the traditional Harari houses have 5 seating platforms called nadabas, as you can see in the picture on the left side over here. So you see 5 nadabas there. The 5 nadabas represent the 5 pillars of faith. And these nadabas are painted with kahafar, which literally translates to red soil. And this kahafar, the red soil, symbolizes the blood of the 700. So this is one way we remember the sacrifice that they took for us, so that we can call ourselves Harari today. And this is a constant reminder to note, because as you enter the house, this is kind of like the first thing you see, reminding anyone who entered the house of the blood that was spilled on that day. The second way we remember them is by the Sati Bakla Shad. So the scarf, the shad, is called the Sati Bakla, which literally translates to the 700, in remembrance of the 700. So the scarf is known as a Sati Bakla. It's a white scarf, as you can see over here, with red trimmings. And the red trimming symbolizes the blood that was spilled on that day. So this is an overt reminder symbolizing the 700 Harari men were killed in Chelanqo. And interesting to note is that only married men are allowed to wear the scarf over here. So you can see a few elders wearing it over here. So this scarf is only to be worn by married men. And in the Harari culture, when a man gets married, it's the father-in-law's responsibility to give him a Sati Bakla along with a Quran. And this is kind of like a reminder to say, remember the legacy of these men, and carry it down to the generations to come. When we become aware of this red symbolism in the Nadabagad and the Shad, we begin to see Jalanko everywhere within the Harari culture, be it in the red squares of the Harari basket or the red details in the Harari headwear of a woman. And now the third way we remember them is through our songs. So not only did we pass down our history and culture through our songs, but we also use songs to remember the sacrifice of these individuals. And the audio I'm going to play now is from a very well-known Harari folk singer named Shamitu. So the Gaysanan used in this audio is a bit complex for me, but what I can tell you is that this song is in remembrance of the 700 that died. And the mothers you hear in that audio are praising them for their sacrifices, and they also sing about love for one another as a people. And in this video that I'm about to show you guys is another way that we commemorated their remembrance. So on the 120th anniversary of the war, our elders from Hadar gathered and traveled together to the grounds of where the Jalanko battle took place. The fathers were reciting the testification of faith, La ilaha illallah, and our mothers were singing the dua of hardship, which was Ya Hafiz, Ya Salam. And they carried bun and siri on their heads in remembrance of those who sacrificed their lives, so that today we can call themselves Muslims and Harari.
مجن 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 يا حفيد يا سلام مجن يا حفيد يا سلام مجن 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 نبي مجن مجن هزالا مجن مجن فرزال مجن 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 اللبي مجن مجن نبي مجن 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 يا الله يا حبيب يا سلام مجن يا الله يا حبيب يا سلام ممان مجن باديا ومان مجن براو ممان مجن بحرو ومان مجن تديجا ومان مجن تديجبو ومان مجن موتاز جنة مجن دالو زي رحمت مجن مجن يالو يا حبيب يا سلام مجن يالو يا حبيب يا سلام مجن 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 نصبين مجن مجن نزبين مجن مجن حرفي بين مجن مجن رحبين مجن 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 يالو بعد ما بعد بيجي مجن يالو بعد ما بعد بيجي مجن 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 الله بين مجن
من يقوم سحالة تنراوي ذلك ورم حرك عايشنا بالقبل بكنتي كله بجدين انت يا رازي مس ذكري عيسابي إلى وتبي اللي يزالت أي اللي تبعنا
سبحان دائم حمدي تغير سبحان دائم شكري تغير سبحان دائم حمدي تغير سبحان دائم شكري تغير نزور يا بردي رحمة خاطو يا بردي صفات مودي كبتو فاينا ما رحمنا به ولا كينا ما نمنا به سبحان دائم حمدي تخيل سبحان دائم شكري تخيل
So in the video we just seen now, you saw our elders visiting the grounds of Jalanko to not only visit but to recite Quran and to praise Allah so that we remember their sacrifice. And that resonates because I feel like that's something that we as a generation need to continue to kind of maintain our identity and know who we are. I thank you guys for listening. Barakallahu fikum, and thank you very much.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Abbas, Hassan Abbas, well done. Imam in the presentation of the Karpa, I'm amazed. بالتسلال اللي ودايسنا بجيه لم تبوز انت سوالاتي تمام وزو يستوي تعرف كمان انت زشكا ميبي الله بواجرا خيي ويقدر ودايسنا زي بايسنا الامان لو كتاب ميبي نازل يوكو سوالتي هذا ما قبل الباب ما جيسنا به ولفتاش هذا نشكي من البيت ما تثبت السلال ما خاجي زاشكا بكاجي ما زوبه اللي حارثة ما تمثل البيت على يزيد لما تخشي ورتوكا ما هو لفتاش لنا زاك شغل له خلقي
سلا جلالك حرب ذاته
ايه ان جنرال
والله يا لنو
ايه لنا قراي مع هذا ماشي ايه هو جزاش كازو صفات الشيء ملتا
شكرا.
سؤال سنة زو بجينتا وأزي باش سنة اللي لو خلاقي هو يشي وزاتو متقطع أزي باش لو تاشا لو خلقرا إنجليش بيحني ورا مرة من تجسنا بيزك شتغل.
أزباش للوح قبل زخ حالنجرا قبل زخ حالنجرا عادة زنا وتاريخ سنا ومعناتنا من حد استفاد أشي منتا بجه سوي بعد بزاد تاريخ سو عادة زو زيكما زتمس سؤال ما أسوأ دي ما نتصو زاكا كده قدم ممكن تروح زوي مش عشان ذكر عشان زانتا جيسنا بأوي الله يترحمنا وأهل نخمخ الناريين ننزلنا إشارة زريرة مندوسو منا مداخل النار وسوى دي إشارة ذو أقرب بديجة لعلاقة قرا أقرب فون يهر بزار أوغا يكون من بعديتا. And in short, in English, if I was to say it again, is for our generation to hold on to our culture and who we are, because where we came from shows us where we're heading. Right, and our identity protects us in many ways that we oftentimes don't see. And maintaining your identity and protecting your identity and who you are as a person, it's not a one-person job. It's a community effort where it takes a communal effort to pass down. And that's my message.
فزبي شكرا حسن عباس. جهجات وقت تنباشنا حسن عباس بيجي مثلا أنا بجي آدم ذكرايسنا زو قسم ذكرايسنا خوكتي بأزي باشنا وتورنتو بكلتيش لنا ندزال يكورونا سبب تابلاي بجي برنامج نلقى نرى الله باقي يجي بيننا التوم ونزوم الله ولما شفنا ما ولا تايزن زرق بنسا بجي تلاقي سونا رخوزنا قنار وجي لي تاريخ مدايبه نباس بحث نارينا والناجم من تعلل به الله باقي راسم باسو على برنامج فاندي ام تراكسي وجي الذي نارينا برنامج يمستنرا يبي نقبلنا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
IHMS